Hey everyone, this is Nick, and apparently people are expecting gifts in about a week and I haven't bought anything, so I guess my family is just getting these Linux and open source news this year. This week we have an unholy association of big tech companies banding together to make an open source competitor to Google Maps. We have the death of Adblockers and tracker blockers being pushed back, and we have Apple finally working on opening up iOS to third-party app stores, after the EU mandated it. Just like the EU forced me to tell you about today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Linode. Linode is the only solution I use to run my own Nextcloud server and my OnlyOffice server as well. It's a super easy solution to deploy basically anything you want in one click. They have a huge marketplace of applications you can host, from Nextcloud, WordPress, Drupal, GitLab or Grafana, to gaming servers for Minecraft, Ark, CSGO, Rust, Valheim and more. They take care of all the configuration for you. All you have to do is click the thing you want to deploy, fill in a few details, and your server is up and running. And once everything is live, it's still super easy to manage your servers, to upgrade or downgrade them, add some storage, back them up, and get help if you're stuck. I've been using Linode for years now, and I can only recommend them. If you want to give them a shot, click the link in the description below, and you'll get $100 of free credits to get started. In a weird association of big tech companies, the Linux Foundation decided to partner with Meta, Microsoft, AWS and TomTom to launch the Overture Maps Foundation. The goal is to develop an interoperable set of mapping data that's also open. They want to have completely open datasets that can be reused across any application and any business, and each member of the foundation will throw their own data and resources into the foundation to make sure everything is as good as can be. TomTom will probably be the biggest contributor here as they have a lot of data they can use, but they will also use maps from OpenStreetMaps and open data provided by municipalities. They're working on releasing their first datasets in the first half of 2023, with basic layers like roads, buildings, and administrative information, and over time they will add routing, navigation, and 3D building data. While this project isn't yet live and will probably take some time before it reaches maturity, it's still going to be an insane competitor to Google Maps. As an open source project managed by the Linux Foundation, I'm pretty confident it will stay private and trustworthy, but with involvement from huge companies like Microsoft, Meta or AWS, you never know. Still, the good thing is that it should grow quite fast and be pushed heavily by these companies as a replacement to Google Maps wherever it is used. With the price hikes for companies using Google Maps on their websites that made it insanely expensive, this might be another nail in the coffin of one of Google's biggest services. And now you might wonder, why not just contribute to OpenStreetMap directly? And as someone who has worked with OpenStreetMap in my previous product owner life, it's probably because OpenStreetMap gets broken all the time by contributions. Like we had a map and half the time France was underwater because a contributor just broke the coastline and so the map just reflected where water was going, so it was all over France. This new foundation is probably looking to build something that is a little bit more data control with a little bit more quality assessment, and so that's probably why they're not contributing directly to OSM instead. Google will push back the death of good ad blockers on Chrome by a few more months. They had planned to deprecate the Manifest v2 API for browser extensions in early 2023, but this has now been postponed. Now, this API allowed extension developers to access browser requests, thus letting them build tracker blockers and ad blockers that actually work well. And the new Manifest v3 API that Google proposed will hamstring these capabilities on Chrome, so it's good to see that deadline moved back. They plan to stop featuring extensions using Manifest v2 in the Chrome store starting in January, then plan to experiment with turning off Manifest v2 support entirely on the Chrome stable channel in June, before completely removing all Manifest v2 extensions in January 2024. The first step is postponed, and the two others are currently under review to know if they will also be pushed back or not. The move isn't apparently prompted by the Adblocker issue though, as Google identified other problems, like the service workers' inability to use DOM capabilities, which means this new version of the Manifest API could not manipulate the contents of a web page after it's loaded, something that is used by a lot of extensions. They're trying to find a solution, or at least to mitigate the problem, before dumping the older API. If you want to know more about this issue, I have a video linked in the description or in the card here on YouTube. And yes, it's just an extension. It's not like they're revamping the whole Manifest v3 extension to keep developers happy and letting them just use the web as it's meant to be. But still, it's better than nothing. And if you don't use Chrome, then you have nothing to worry about, because most other browsers, while they will support Manifest v3, will also keep the capabilities needed by Manifest v2 extensions, so your ad blockers and tracker blockers will still work nicely. Looks like Apple will finally open iOS up, as they're working on a project to allow alternative app stores on its mobile devices. Now, they're not doing that from the good of their heart, of course, but thanks to a new set of regulations in the EU that prompt gatekeepers to allow more competition on their platforms. Gatekeepers being the term used in this set of laws to describe companies that have a stranglehold on certain markets or devices and that have historically used that power to limit what other companies can do to reach customers. Apparently, Apple is dedicating a significant amount of resources to enable that, and the end result would be that users will be able to download third-party app stores to their iPhones and iPads, and evade the App Store if they so choose. Some engineers at Apple seem to see it as a distraction from the day-to-day development of new features, and I've seen some articles online saying that it would make iOS less secure, as companies would refuse to use the App Store and push people to less secure third-party ones. But it looks like Apple will still mandate certain security requirements for these app stores and the apps they distribute. As in, they will verify each app anyway with a developer fee, just like what already exists today on the App Store. I have 3 thoughts on this. First, the less secure argument is pure nonsense. Android has had third-party app stores from probably the beginning of Android, and we can't really say that most companies have ditched the Play Store to install their own third-party stores. Most companies, if not 99.9% of them, still publish to the Play Store, so it's just going to be an additional option, but it will not lower security for iOS users. And second, it's obviously great news, as it means that people who want to support developers directly will be able to do so with third-party app stores instead of paying that 30% extra fee to Apple, which is insanely high, let's be honest. And third, I'm pretty sure Apple will still find a way to keep complete control over these app stores and what they can publish or not, which means that the EU will probably fine them or have to revise their sets of laws in the future to make sure that iOS is actually open. XFCE 4.18 is now out. It's the result of 2 years of work and it has some major new features. It gains a new shortcut editor widget that can be used in any app to let users customize how they use their nice little keyboard to interact with them, and it's currently used in Thunar, XFCE Terminal, and Mousepad. The thumbnailer engine is now faster and should generate thumbnails appropriate for high-resolution screens. They merged the date and time and the clock plugin for the XFCE panel. The search field for the settings is now always visible, and when switching GTK themes, you will also have an option to automatically use the corresponding window manager theme. Thunar, the file manager, got the ability to display the file count in folders in a column, and you can also add the file creation date as well. It has a new image preview panel, which can be either embedded above the Places sidebar, or it can use a separate panel on the right. Thunar also gained undo and redo capabilities for basic file operations like move, rename, trash, or create. Files can have a highlight color over their name, and you can set that in the properties dialog of each file. The toolbar can be configured as you want by removing items, adding new ones, and reordering them, and there's a split view option now to have 2 folders open side by side. On top of that, the file manager gained recursive search, a recent files item in the Places sidebar, an easy-to-access Restore Items button in the trash, and the ability to create custom actions to apply on files that will pop up in the right-click menu. There are also a lot of other improvements like better UI scaling, support for adaptive vsync in the compositor, and more. And sure, for 2 years of work, if you compare that to what GNOME or KDE have accomplished, it might seem small, but XFCE has never been about huge sweeping changes to a formula that they like. They just want to keep their desktop working as it is and incrementally improve the experience, which is exactly what this release is doing. The new version of the Linux kernel is out, version 6.1, and its major addition is the support of Rust, which will let developers write code or drivers in that language. They also added MGLRU for multi-generational least recently used, a system that optimizes memory usage and performance under RAM pressure. The system isn't enabled by default yet, but I am sure some distributions will turn it on anyways. The kernel also supports the PinePhone Pro entirely, so no more custom kernels needed. And there's a new bunch of sound hardware drivers, like for Apple Silicon, AMD Rembrandt, or MediaTek SoCs. Xbox One Elite controllers will now have support for their back paddles through the XPads driver, and there's more hardware support for gaming peripherals as well. Future CPUs also get their first implementations here, like Intel's Meteor Lake, Arc GPUs, or future Ryzen chips. And if you prefer your kernel to be entirely free software, the GNU Linux Libra kernel has been updated as well, and it removes firmware blobs for various drivers to ensure you have a completely fast experience. Depending on your distro, you'll get the update sooner or later, but it's always better to wait for your distribution to package and ship that update to you rather than compile it yourself or install it from other sources. The Pine 64, makers of the PinePhone, PineTime, and more, have announced the PineTab 2, a tablet that runs Linux. It's powered by a Rockchip 3566 SoC, which is a quad-core ARM CPU with a Mali GPU. It comes with 2 USB-C ports, a micro HDMI port, a micro SD slot, and a headphone jack, plus front-facing and rear cameras. It comes with up to 8GB of RAM and 128GB of flash storage, with a cheaper version at 4GB of RAM and 64GB of storage. It has a metal chassis and a detachable keyboard like a Surface, and it's stated to be easy to open and repairable. It uses a 10.1-inch display, although there is no word on the resolution, and we don't know the price or availability just yet, but the previous PineTab came at $99, so if they can maintain that price or even double it, it will be a very interesting little tablet to run Linux on. Although that SoC isn't a powerhouse, as it's going to be less powerful than what came in the Pinebook Pro, around 2/3 of that amount of computing power. I don't expect it to perform really well, but it still could be a nice cheap option for day-to-day computing, or at least having an on-the-go Linux device. Now if you want a more powerful Linux tablet though, I made a video recently about the FightTab Duo. I left a link in the description below and in the card around here. And let's finish this with the gaming news. First, The Verge talked to Valve developers, and it looks like we will be getting a revised version of the Steam Deck in the future, with a more serviceable battery, as in easier to remove and replace, better buttons, better battery life, and a better display, although the performance won't be a focus point, it will stay the same. They also said they want to make a Steam controller too, saying it's likely they will explore that. And they also talked about Steam machines, and confirmed again that they will release SteamOS 3 for everyone, and that they're excited to see other manufacturers using it to make gaming devices. They're testing additional concepts for the living room, as in a regular Steam console, but since they're focused on the deck, it might not amount to anything in the end, and they would prefer third parties to create these kinds of devices. Wine on Wayland is getting closer as well, thanks to the work of Collabora. As of now, if you run a Wine app under Wayland or a Proton game, it's going to use X-Wayland, so basically an X server running on top of Wayland. But it might soon change, and this means better stability and performance. They provided a video with various applications and games running, and it looks pretty good. And also, Steam is now available in various Tesla cars, notably the Model S and the Model X. It runs on Linux, so you will be able to play a big chunk of your Steam library while your car is charging. And it all runs directly locally, because these cars actually have pretty decent AMD Navi GPUs. The touchscreen can be used to navigate and play, and the steering wheel as well. Hey, if you have to wait 30 minutes for your car to recharge in the middle of your trip, you might as well try and decrease the amount of games in your Steam backlog, right? And you might as well try a device from today's sponsor. If you're looking to buy a computer to run Linux on it, don't go ahead and buy any old Windows laptop or desktop. Buy something from Tuxedo. Their computers are designed to run Linux specifically, which means that when you buy one, you know that Linux will run perfectly on it. They have a big range of devices, from the smallest ultrabooks and laptops to the biggest gaming workstations, gaming towers, or just laptop workstations and gaming laptops as well. And they're all pretty configurable, repairable, with options for CPUs, GPUs, SSDs, RAM, even optical Blu-ray players, anything you want. You can even have your own keyboard layout laser-etched on your laptop, or your own logo laser-etched on the lid of the laptop. So if you need a new device and you want to make sure it runs Linux perfectly, and you want to support Linux development, click the link in the description below and buy yourself a Tuxedo laptop. They are really good. So thanks everyone for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't hesitate to like, to subscribe, to turn on notifications, to write a comment. And if you didn't like it, well, there's always that dislike button. And also do tell me why in the comments. It's just nicer this way. And if you want to support the channel, there's a super thanks button underneath the video on YouTube, there's a PayPal link in the description, and there are also links to my Patreon memberships and YouTube memberships. Both get access to a weekly podcast where I talk about Linux, open source, tech, the channel, my general life, everything, and you also get to vote on the next topics that I'll cover for the next month. So if you're interested, both links are down there. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!